Alright, welcome back everybody. This is the Domcast episode 5. And for those of you that maybe don't have time to watch the entire YouTube video, because I know I did see some people asking in the comments where else they could find this, the Domcast is also on iTunes, so I will have the link in the comment section and in the description for you to find this show so you can listen to it when you're in the gym, in the car, wherever is most convenient for you, if YouTube is not convenient, because we all know unless you're paying for that subscription, you cannot close the app and listen, so that should be a bit more convenient for some of you out there. And we got some more good questions this week. Remember, if you ever want to participate, make sure to follow my Instagram, Dom_2K. Around every Thursday or Friday, I put a questionnaire out. You all give me topics, and then I address them here. So the first topic is one that I am actually very excited to tackle. This is from Original King on Instagram, and he asked, how do you think Zion's game will translate to the league? And I definitely did want to talk about that. I'm really glad somebody asked. But I did also want to address that if you weren't paying attention, he made his return. A lot of people thought once he got injured, it looked scary enough that we were saying, okay, we're already, that happened right before March, right at the beginning of March. And everyone was kind of saying the same thing, like, yeah, maybe he should just go ahead and sit the rest of this out. Don't want to push that knee and make it a more serious injury before the NBA. All of a sudden, you fumbled a bag. And yeah, I was one of those people, no doubt. But I do give Zion a lot of respect for what he's doing, because he was asked about that after the interview. Of course, he heard all the chatter. And he basically said, you know what, I wasn't going to sell out on my teammates like that. I wasn't going to jump out on them like that. I love playing at Duke. It's a very noble thing because he could have easily been selfish. He could have very easily just used that knee to say I'm not playing anymore, or to, you know, just stretch it, right? Just say it's not ready until the season is over. Next thing you know, you're in the NBA. He could have used all that time to just train, but he wants to be at Duke. He wanted to play next to his brothers, and obviously they're shooting for that national championship. I will say that's definitely one thing I didn't consider enough, or at least talk about enough, when I was saying that he shouldn't come back. I was really only looking from his perspective, like his basketball perspective. But sometimes we forget that these are regular people, and especially for him, he's only 19, so this is a regular kid. And you know, he's got friends on campus, his teammates are his brothers, probably a lot of people that he did not want to let down, so respect to him for playing. And speaking of selfish, I am extremely selfishly happy that he is playing, because that's like one of the highlights of this month for me, was to be able to see him in March Madness. I love watching him play. That dude, I watched him play last night, and it's just one of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen. Everything he does is with authority. His rebounds, the dunks, he makes incredible reads on defense. Like, there will be defensive plays where I see it because I'm watching on TV or on the computer, and I think maybe he doesn't see it because he's on the floor, so it's a different perspective, but he'll make that same read. He'll read a pass across the court, go get it when it could have been a bad gamble, but a lot of the times it's successful and it leads to a highlight. So extremely happy to see him playing. And as for the question, how do I think it's going to translate to the league? You know, yesterday was actually Larry Johnson's birthday. Larry Johnson, grandmama, for the Hornets, for the Knicks when they went to the finals. If you don't know who that is, definitely go look up a highlight tape. And until I saw his highlight tape yesterday, because it was his 50th birthday, I believe, so they put together a nice little mix for him. For some reason, I hadn't made that connection. I feel like as somebody with an audience, I felt like I had failed a bit, because of course I know about Larry Johnson, but for some reason, I just never thought to compare him to Zion. And it's not a 100% match, but it is very similar, man. When you look at their body builds, when you look at how they played with the raw power and athleticism, the fact that they could maybe hit a shot outside every now and then, but that wasn't like their strongest suit, right? It was something that they could have been better at. Go watch Larry Johnson's highlight tape, and they play very similar. Of course, for the size that they are, Zion has got a bit more bounce. Zion has bounce that we really, it's like that once in a generation type bounce, right? But still, they're very similar. And just so I can give you some numbers, Larry Johnson is listed at 6'6", 250 pounds. Zion Williamson is listed at 6'7", 285. So obviously there is a size and weight difference. But like I said, similar builds, similar power, similar athleticism, similar play style. And Larry Johnson was a very good player, so obviously Larry did play in a different NBA back when it was not essential for guys of size or guys playing the 4 to be able to shoot. So the game has changed a little bit. It of course will benefit Zion to become an even more consistent shooter. But as you can see with Ben Simmons, that's not the make or break for whether you can be a star, because Ben Simmons is a star and guys guard him. Whenever he's on the perimeter, you'll see guys kind of in the paint. So while I don't think that style is ever going to win an NBA championship, I think before Simmons is a championship point guard leading a team, I think he's going to have to be able to at least attempt shots, at least get guys to respect him. With the whole size and athleticism thing, and the reads you can make, the defense you can play, the rebounding, Zion will still be a very good rookie. That is a hill that I am prepared to die on. And that's rare for me because if you follow me long enough, you know I don't make a habit of talking about college players and what they'll do in the league because it's just one of those things where you never know, right? You never know what work ethic is going to be like once they're in the league, how they're going to handle the size and speed change and all that. You just don't know. You can analyze every bit of information and you still don't know. The guy just might be a role player. But Zion, like I said, I've been watching hoops a pretty long time in my life. What I see from him out of everything I've seen is just so extraordinary. His game will translate to the NBA. I have no quarrels with saying that, and if you come back to this in like a year or two and I'm wrong, then I'm just wrong, because we've seen a player like him be successful before. We know that he needs to improve his shot, but he's literally got everything else. So I've never been this excited to see a player make a rookie debut. I was very excited to see Ben Simmons, but Zion is like, that's really one of the reasons I did not want him to play any more college basketball, because once I saw, it's like, when does a shoe explode, right? So I was like, if that freak accident can happen, that kind of scares you into thinking, man, what if this guy sustains a serious injury, if he comes back and the knee isn't fully healed? I really didn't want anything to jeopardize me being able to see him as a #1 pick next year and seeing what he can do in the league, but at the end of the day, none of us can control that. So I'm looking forward to it, and I will 100% co-sign Zion's potential in the league. Like, I just don't see bust potential there. Next question comes from Batteir, and he's asking, is there a way that we can improve the Basketball Hall of Fame because it seems like everyone gets in? And yes, 110%, it can be improved because I think this is one of those things that all NBA fans kind of unanimously agree on, that there just kind of seems to be no rhyme or reason to the the Basketball Hall of Fame. It really feels like if a player was in the NBA and he had some kind of name recognition and he was good for a certain amount of years, or if he was a superstar for a certain amount of years, it just kind of feels like no matter what, they get in. So there's many things that can be done to improve it, and I will suggest that you read Bill Simmons' book of basketball because he has an entire section, an entire chapter dedicated to how to improve the Hall of Fame. And it's been a couple of years since I read it. I believe it was the 2017 summer when I read that book. But from what I remember, he was talking about like having tiers of Hall of Famers, right? And not like first ballot, second ballot. I'm sorry, I don't remember 100%. But he was basically saying that the Hall of Fame should be built like a pyramid because for all intents and purposes, the Hall of Fame has lost its relevance to fans. That's kind of how he puts it. And it's very true. It's to the point that whenever someone's trying to make a point about a certain team and they're like, oh, well, this team had 4 Hall of Famers. It's like, yeah, but you can be a Hall of Famer really just for having been on that team and having played a great role. Hall of Fame doesn't mean the same thing for every player though. Like, every player is not a Larry Bird type Hall of Famer. So read Bill Simmons' book of basketball because he even talked about redesigning the actual Hall of Fame place, the one that is in Springfield. Is that where it is? He even talked about actually designing it with like different floors, so you can go on one floor and read about all these Hall of Famers, and then the next floor, like, it should also physically be something like a pyramid, right? He had a really good idea, and I don't know that they're making, or the NBA or whoever makes those decisions, I'm not even sure that that's a priority for them, but I would love to see it happen in my lifetime, because that's my least favorite thing about the Hall of Fame is not how many people get in, it's how it's used as a narrative when they just lump it all together and say a team had so many Hall of Famers. Yeah, that's something I would like to see changed. Next up, Talento is asking, is it time for Giannis to win and win now? And this goes off of something I've been saying in videos for probably the last year, maybe some months, where I was basically saying we're at the point in Giannis's career now where if they get upset or beat in like the first round or the second round, people will start looking at him funny because you know that players have kind of like a grace period, right? When they're as great as Giannis, it seems like there is a point in their career where nobody's really giving them flack for not being so successful. But then it's like after a certain amount of exits, after a certain amount of premature exits, it's as if people start putting a spotlight on them and saying, okay, now a lot of people have said this about you, but now it's time for you to go prove it. So with Giannis, it's interesting because I believe this is his 6th year or 7th year in the NBA, so he's getting to that point where around this time we started to look at LeBron funny because he had not won yet. However, I get the sense that if Giannis makes it to the NBA Finals this year and loses, it comes with contingencies because if they go to the finals but they lose to the Warriors, that's where it's different for him and many other players in NBA history because guys just haven't existed around teams that were as good as the Warriors before. So you fail in a league with regular parity, that's one thing. You get to the finals this year and play a team that could win the championship even if they were missing one of their starters, one of their all-star starters. I'm not sure people really take that as an issue with you. Now, what will be an issue, and I think people would be disappointed, is if they got to the finals and let's say somehow through some miracle it was the Rockets instead of the Warriors, or it was OKC, it was somebody else that we want to see. And if the Bucks lost that series, then I think next year Giannis would really be on the hot seat, because at that point they will say, okay, well, last year you lost in 7 games to the Boston Celtics. For some reason, I was confusing it last time I talked about this. I said they lost in 5 to the Celtics. I was mixing it up with the Sixers series. So they lost in 7 to the Celtics, who did not have Kyrie and Hayward. That was pretty disappointing for a lot of people. Then they'll say, okay, you got to the finals this year and caught a break because you didn't play the Warriors. So then it's like, well, where's the championship to cap off one of the most amazing regular season campaigns we've ever seen? So long story short, I think because of the circumstances and who they are expected to see if they do make the finals, nobody can really hold it against him and the Bucks if they don't beat the Warriors. But anybody else except the Warriors, and Giannis really needs to turn on that killer that we all see, right? The regular season killer we see, all that grinning he does, those ridiculous Wilt Chamberlain-like averages. We're going to need to see that, and that would really be amazing for his body of work, because unlike LeBron James, Giannis did not come into this league with a million different expectations. Nobody was calling Giannis the king. Giannis didn't walk in the league like this was all just his. So I think that's why the expectations really haven't been so high up until this year where the Bucks are really good. And even then, you don't really hear people saying like it's a make or break year for him, because aside from Kobe Bryant challenging him to win the MVP back in like 2017, Giannis has just never really been that guy with a million different expectations. And maybe it's because he's in the small market and you don't really ever hear much from him. Everything just kind of takes place on the court. I don't know, but this year I will say anything except an Eastern Conference final appearance for the Bucks would definitely be considered a failure, and I think it would start weighing on Giannis as well. They're just so good right now. They're so good this season and so consistent that it would definitely hurt to get to the playoffs and not at least make the conference finals. King Clayton is asking, Shane Batteir versus Draymond Green, who's the better glue guy? Ooh, that's a good one, because I could definitely see how people would just kind of breeze over Shane Batteir and not know a lot about what he did if they did not watch him. However, I'm still going to go Draymond Green. Shane Batteir was an amazing glue guy. He's one of those names that never come up when you hear about the Miami Heat days, or back when he was bleeding trying to guard Kobe Bryant. Yeah, he just did a lot of little things to help your team win. I'm still going to go Draymond though, because although he's not really likable to a lot of fans, he literally does all your dirty work. He's the emotional leader of the team. I'm not sure what Shane Batteir's locker room presence was like, but you definitely didn't see him as much doing things like Draymond Green, where Cousins pretty much flopped the other night and you saw Draymond come over there and get in his face and give him a pep talk. You see that even though he's pretty much a role player, all-star, he's like teetering on that line. He doesn't care. He'll get in anybody's face. He's been in Durant's face, yelled at DeMarcus. He understands his role in that team is an emotional leader, and he's not afraid to assert that over anybody. And then on the court, no, this is not his best season, but if you look over this Warriors run, you could expect scoring if you needed it from him, and not like 30-point outbursts, but he can still provide rebounding, defense, passing. Like, you can just expect everything on top of that emotional leading. So for that reason, I'm picking Draymond Green as the glue guy, but I'm not sleep on Shane Battier. Marios is asking, what is your opinion on the Mavericks year, and will they get a good free agent to make a big three? First of all, the Mavericks year has been hilarious because Dirk never said he was retiring, but the league has given him a farewell tour. He got an honorary spot on the All-Star team. Doc Rivers stopping games for him. I don't know, that part has been hilarious. And then as far as their season, you know what? Luka fell to them this summer. They got exactly what they wanted. He is more than likely going to be Rookie of the Year. I don't think Trae Young's post All-Star performance is going to snag that from him. And then a lot of where they won, because obviously they're not going to make the playoffs, but they won with the front office. Of course, they got Kristaps Porzingis. So a lot of it is about what it's going to be moving forward for them. As this question is asking, because there is some rumblings now about a Mavericks big three. You got the two, you've got Luka, you got Porzingis. So what about a third guy to really kind of solidify them going forward? Well, one of the names I heard was Kemba Walker. All of a sudden, Kemba is now maybe expected to leave Charlotte. I don't know, all season we were hearing that maybe he was going to stay, or not maybe, but it was really that he was going to stay. That was the sentiment. Nobody had been talking about his free agency. So who knows? Anybody can write an article. Who knows where Kemba's heart is right now? Anyways, I did see something that it made me wonder, does bringing Kemba to the Mavericks make sense? Because you want the ball in Luka's hand a lot, and if you bring Kemba, that is going to conflict. But do you turn down the option to have a Kemba, Luka, and Porzingis quote-unquote big three? It's not like 3 superstars or anything, but whatever, I guess it qualifies. It's 3 well-known names. I saw Zach SDC talking about the Mavericks and how they were supposedly 100% getting Nikola Vucevic this summer. And I'm like, wow, man, the Magic are, they're gonna lose another great guy. Victor Oladipo, Tobias Harris, now Vucevic. It's like you drafted all these guys and you're just gonna lose them all. Now they gotta groom Mo Bamba and lose him, and then maybe he becomes a star somewhere, I don't know. Anyways, if that's the move, maybe that makes more sense. Now you got Luka and 2 extremely versatile big men that can shoot the ball. Then Luka can be the primary ball handler around the perimeter. That makes sense as well. Anyways, I guess that's the direction they're going to be looking this summer, because it's hard to imagine that we're randomly going to get a situation where Kevin Durant ends up in Dallas or where some big name ends up there. I don't know. I just don't really see that. But I don't know. I don't have any inside sources. So I think the names that is more realistic would probably be like a Vucevic, probably like a Kemba Walker. And even though we wonder how a Kemba would work there as far as the X's and O's, it's not like they're not going to sign him if there's mutual interest, so we'll see what happens, but they have a bright future anyway. This season has just been the setup. TP Dandridge is asking, is Tim Duncan one of the most underrated players of all time? No, he is rated appropriately in my opinion. He's in a lot of people's top 10s. You always see people trying to put him above Kobe Bryant. To me, it seems like Tim is just one of those players that got the attention that he asked for, because he really didn't ask for a whole lot. He didn't tell anybody he was retiring the season that he retired. He just did it. So there was no big farewell tour. His whole career, he was very low-key. He was just damn good and low-key his entire career. There was no controversy surrounding him. He didn't play for 4 different teams. Tim is like the most, he's probably the most lovable superstar ever. So for that reason, you don't get people trying to write a ton of narratives about him to, you know, push him back or push him forward. He's not controversial. So I think, at least for right now, he's ranked appropriately. Every time I see a list, Duncan is on it, so I would not call him underrated. His personality type just did not warrant a ton of hype, and he doesn't get a ton of hype. Jay Van Mail is asking, who's your favorite role player? And I honestly hadn't even thought about this topic until he asked it. And I think I would go Jeremy Grant. I really admire what he's done with his game, because if you just go back 2 seasons where Westbrook didn't really have a quote-unquote help, we didn't know how good Oladipo was back then, but Kevin Durant had just left, and Jeremy Grant was one of the players surrounding Westbrook that we were saying, well, Westbrook is playing on a team where he can create penetration, but nobody around him can really shoot. Well, look at Jeremy Grant now. You actually have to respect his 3-point shot. He's shooting a great percentage on a good amount of attempts. And it took me a while to catch on, because this whole season, right, I kept seeing him shoot the ball whenever I watch OKC games. And I'm so programmed to think that you can just leave him open, because again, this is Jeremy Grant. I'm like, yeah, this is one of those guys in OKC that just couldn't shoot. And every time I would see him shoot it, I'm like, oh, okay, he's just trying to fit into this era. He's trying to force some kind of floor spacing. But then, like, over the course of the year, I'm watching these games and a lot of them are going in. So one day I finally look up his stats and I'm like, oh, he can actually shoot now. Yeah, I thought he was just trying it, but no, he actually makes them. So for that reason, to answer your question, I would say Jeremy Grant, because he's actually a very underrated part of OKC's season. Dare I say, he's been a really good, not replacement, but fill-in for Andre Roberson. Andre Roberson, the thing about having him out there was he was a great defender, but he couldn't shoot the ball. And the thing I've always thought about since his injury was, OKC fans should not be sitting here waiting for Andre Roberson thinking that's going to make such a big difference in their season, because he's been out for so long. There's no way he's going to bring the same defensive impact. At least that's what I think. And so now you don't have to be totally dependent on him coming back. You've got another role player in there that's actually knocking down shots and spreading the floor. Because you put Roberson out there next to George and Westbrook. I know they were actually doing pretty good with that lineup last year, but being able to close in space always hurts, especially when you get to the playoffs. So yeah, I really love what Jeremy Grant has done for them. Chris is asking, who will be the first to leave? Karl Towns or Devin Booker? Without even looking at what they have left on their contracts, definitely Karl Towns, because the Wolves have gone through a phase where they were really bad when they got him. They got better and went to the playoffs, and they had Jimmy Butler, so it looked like they may be pretty solid for the future. And now they don't have Butler, and now they're back out of the playoffs, so now they got to find something new again. And it's starting to feel like, okay, when was Towns drafted? 2015? So we're moving on to the 2019-2020 season. He's gaining some years, and the Wolves are not making any progress. The little progress they did make was already wiped out. Not to say that they can't rebound, but let me remind you that Minnesota does not have a history of building around their big man, building anything successful around their big man. The one time they did it was 04 with Garnett. They made a lot of short-sighted moves to go contend that year. It almost worked, but it ultimately fell apart. They lost all of KG's help when he was younger, when he was first there. So just looking at the history, it's like, alright, I don't know what's changed in the front office. Maybe they have some different guys now, but so far it looks like more of the same. Meanwhile, Devin Booker, they're going to have a higher pick this year. He's a really good player, and they have Aiden. So the Suns at least have some sense of direction where they're going. They may have sucked for a really long time, but you can at least see a direction where you're like, okay, a couple of more moves, couple of more additions, key additions, and we should start to see them go upwards where they can make their run. The Wolves' run seemed like it was with Jimmy Butler, and that ended abruptly. Like, I didn't think he was just gonna up and leave like he did, or up and want to trade like he did. So yeah, if I had to place money on it, I would definitely say Karl Towns is out first. B in Town is asking, would you sign and trade for KD if you're Boston? If so, would you include Tatum? Now, I do want to say before I address this question at all, I have no clue what the logistics of Kevin Durant coming to Boston are, if they're even possible. I have no clue, because for some reason it's something that I have not even considered. But apparently him and Kyrie are really good friends. Maybe KD is looking to leave this summer, but he also said he wants a bag, so there's that. But I'll just say this to answer your question. If there was any way that Boston could get Kevin Durant this summer, yes, I am for it. You can check every recording I've ever made on this site. I've never called KD a snake. I said his move to Golden State was weak, but I've also been anticipating seeing what he might do to kind of get rid of that black mark on his career. If he wants to come to Boston, it is open arms. Anything except moving Kyrie, because I feel like it defeats the purpose to move Kyrie in any contending move. But if there is any way we can get Kevin Durant in Boston, absolutely, would not even hesitate. Luca is asking, should we care less about wild scoring runs nowadays because of all the rule changes? I'm going to say this, a couple of weeks ago, I was with some friends and we were talking about James Harden, and we were talking about the points he's averaging this season, talking about MVP discussions and all that, and I actually found myself on the side of saying, you know, what Harden is doing is great, but let's not get way too hyped, because there's a lot of things that have happened in this era that kind of make a Harden season possible. Don't get me wrong, the guy is an incredible offensive player, but I was also saying things have changed. This style might not have worked in a different era. Now, I wasn't saying that to discredit Harden, and to answer your question, no, I'm not going to say you should care less. I would just say you should be careful when you're talking about, or when you're comparing across eras. Like, when you're comparing a James Harden season to, say, a Kobe Bryant season in 06, I would say just be cautious of the fact, or just be cautious of how much things have changed. Because it might be easy to just look at James Harden numbers and say, oh, he's much better than this guy, or, oh, things have changed, times have changed, James Harden is what's it. I'm like, just consider, you know, he's playing in this perfect system with D'Antoni that encourages the offense. He has bent this game to his will. He has found out how to get a foul whenever he needs it. He can shoot as much as he needs. Definitely not saying to care less or that it's not impressive, because I actually find myself protecting Harden quite a bit. And I would never wipe my nose at 36 points a game and the assists that he averaged, and the fact that the Rockets, before they lost to the Warriors the other night, were looking like they might be able to reclaim the first seed after that slow start. Definitely nothing to just care less about, but also something to be careful when you're talking about eras, because things are very different now. And that is going to be all for today. Again, remember that you can catch this podcast on iTunes, so you can listen to it when you're on the go. Make sure to follow Instagram if you want to be a part of the questions next week, and hit the like button, comment, and sub if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all on next Saturday.